Good morning, everyone. We're in week 3 of our series, Family Flaws, and we'll be focusing on the role of friendships in our lives. When I look back over my life, there have been many friends that have been part of my life at different stages. I think of my childhood, many childhood friends. During my days studying at Technikon in Durban, as newlyweds, we had a particular couple that were very close friends to us. And so at different stages, different people have played different roles and different parts in our life. The amazing thing is that the closest friends from all those different times in our lives have still remained good friends, and we're still in contact to this day. Recently, my close childhood friend, who's been living in the United Kingdom for 20 years, came back for a visit. We had a wonderful time just catching up, trying to just rehashing and reminiscing about things we did, about the old motorbikes we rode, the horses that we had, the gymkhanas we participated in. And we will forever be linked because we shared our lives. There was a shared experience and shared heart and shared life. Jesus speaks about that in John 15:15, and he says, "I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you." I think the point Jesus is trying to make is that when we work for somebody, if somebody is our boss or we serve somebody, generally the relationship is just that. We work for them, they pay us a wage, or they pay us a salary, or we serve them in some degree. We don't really get into their lives. Now, I know that's not the case for every boss, or because there are some exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, that's what Jesus is saying. Unlike a friendship where with friends, your lives become linked. And so Jesus is saying, I will call you friends. I'll be linked with you. We'll share our lives. And that's what it is with friendship. Claire had a message a few days ago from a close nursing friend whom she hasn't seen in 20 years. And this young lady, or this lady, is going through some health issues. And the message came out of the blue, and she said, "Claire, I just want you to know that all those messages or letters of encouragement that you wrote me all those years ago, those letters where you prayed for me," said, "I've kept every single one of them. And as I was going through my memory box, as I read them, I want to let you know that every single prayer, every word of encouragement has come to pass." And the reason she was able to do that is because they shared life together. They shared experiences. They shared messages of hope. They were together when there was discouragement. Some of our closest friends have shown up when we've been at our worst, at times when we've just needed a hug or a hand to hold, or people just to be there, people to listen, not necessarily give advice. On one occasion when our daughter was born and we knew that we were expecting some complications, and her birth was scheduled for Durban. We were living in Pietermaritzburg. And when we arrived in Durban, the room, as we were unpacking Claire's things, as we got into the room, there was a huge bouquet of flowers and a note saying, "We are here at the hospital, we're going to spend the day here, we'll be downstairs, and we're here to pray. We're praying for you, and we're praying for your precious baby." Nothing more needed to be said, but we knew that they loved us. They'd taken time out, they'd taken leave from their work for the day, and just come down to support us. Now those friends are no longer in Pietermaritzburg, but they still play a very active part in our lives. And we know that they love us, and we trust them. In John 13:35, Jesus said this. He said, "The world will know that we are your disciples, or that we are his disciples, by how we love one another." And so I want to just say, it's hard for us to love or share someone's life if we don't love them. 3 things just to look at quickly in terms of our friendships. The first thing is that our friendships are to be carefully chosen. Proverbs 13:20 says this, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Now, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to suffer harm in my life. And so it's prudent for us to walk with people who are wise. If we're going to share our lives with somebody, please, we want to share them with people who are wise, who can add value. As a young man, I had some friendships that were not helpful. And let's just say that the people in those friendships weren't wise. and they were a bad influence on me. And I had to end those friendships because I knew that ultimately they'd lead me down the wrong path. The second thing is our friendship should display Christ's love for the world. Jesus said basically he laid down his life for people, and we want to be able to lay down our lives, and he calls us to live out our friendships in the same manner. He calls us to lay down our lives for our friends. In John 15:12, he says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you." In verse 13, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends." And so how did Jesus live his life with his friends? He was selfless. And so he calls us to live our lives in a manner that is selfless with our friends, to lay down our agendas, lay down what we want out of friendships, and be willing to share our lives with those around us. Jesus had compassion on people. He had mercy. He had time for people. As we love one another in this way, people around us will begin to see the love of Christ. Some time ago in Madagascar, we'd been going to Madagascar for several years, and one of the pastors just spoke to me out of his own accord, and he said, after about 4 years of making regular trips, and he said, "We've watched you and your friends as you've come and ministered to us, and because of the way you love one another, we have changed the way we love our wives and the way we treat our friends." They had a very hierarchical society. The men and women didn't travel together in taxis. They walked behind one another. And over a process of 4 or 5 years of just watching how we as friends loved one another and dealt with one another, they changed the way that they lived. And so we can show Christ's love for the world by going on mission together with our friends and loving the world in that way. The third thing is our friendships are to be Christ-centered. Let's go to Proverbs again, verse 27. It says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one friend sharpens another." And so together we encourage and challenge one another to fulfill our kingdom purpose. We have a purpose. God has called us. He's put a purpose in our hearts and our lives, and He calls us to fulfill that. And so Christ-centered friendships have the same values. When Jesus says, "Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you," when we live with Christ-centered friendships, we live with those kingdom values. How about the gospel? We share the good news of the gospel. We share the experience of having been born again. We share the experience that the gospel of good news and being able to share it. The future. We're able to encourage one another with hope because we know that Christ holds the future in His hands. And so we're able to have hope together. And finally, eternal perspective. We understand where we're going. We understand where our eternity lies. And so we're able to encourage one another with those words. And so I trust that in some way this has helped you, and I trust that you'll have a good evening together. Thank you.